Well, while we support efforts to protect Canada from geopolitical and economic uncertainty, First Nations are very concerned that this federal proposal has the potential to violate many collective rights of First Nations, respecting our lands, our waters, resources, inherent title rights, jurisdiction in our treaties. First Nations, I've told the Prime Minister, will require clarification respecting the design of Crown First Nations engagement and consultation timelines, and how rights holders will be invited to respond to the Crown on this matter. Like First Nations, need to know that, and the rights of First Nations are under international law, and the Constitution of Canada are at stake. So, if free, prior, and informed consent is not obtained from First Nations, this legislation will be marred and mirrored in conflict and protracted litigation.
The premiers are meeting with the Prime Minister today to talk about some of these proposed projects. Should First Nations be part of those meetings?
They absolutely should have been. I know that national chiefs, all national chiefs before me have always stated that they should have been there. First Nations should be there and have a full seat at the table. It just seems like it's always trying to leave First Nations out and coming to us at the last minute and saying, okay, let's work on this together. And that's not a way to work this country. This country, if they look back historically, every time that, when we don't work together right away, things become mirrored in conflict. And if this country wants to do better, they should have had a full seat at the table for First Nations.
In your letter to the PM, you said that this kind of legislation could be a serious threat to First Nations. We're seeing provinces trying to push similar legislation. How concerning is all of that for you?
Well, if the national vision from Canada for First Nations, say infrastructure, is going to be focused exclusively on accessing natural resources, First Ministers need to rethink and broaden their perspectives. I'll say this further. I think Canada needs to start with fast tracking basics like clean water to our First Nations people, quality housing, modern schools. Many of our kids, their schools need to be fixed, or they need bigger schools because our demographics are growing every year. They need all season roads and community infrastructure. And last week, King Charles III, of course, he read the speech from the throne and said governments need to honor truth and reconciliation in both word and in deed. And in a country as rich as Canada, the shameful gap must be closed once and for all when it comes to infrastructure. And this is the mother of all Canadian infrastructure and reconciliation projects. So if we want to talk about that, let's talk about the basics for First Nations people.
Quickly, on another note, many provinces have thousands of people, many First Nations under evacuation. Some concerns have been raised in Manitoba over how things are playing out. What have you been hearing when it comes to the evacuation process?
Absolutely. Look, I think that the provinces need to make sure that they're making sure that First Nations leadership is listened to. And I know that there's lots of work being done all weekend. Look, I rolled my sleeves and helped this weekend too, and helped with some families where I could. And we're in this together. I know it's Mother Nature, but at the same time, there's probably so many lessons learned, but at the same time, trying to work together to make sure that our people are getting to safety as they should. It's still very much in crisis mode, and making sure that if you have conferences and if you have hockey games or other hockey tournaments, and I know that that's the Canadian way, but the Canadian way is also that we help each other. And I think that if we're hearing the scarcity of hotel rooms, especially across the prairies, and many people being pushed to hundreds of thousands, thousands of kilometers away in other hotels just to find hotel rooms, I think that that's disheartening for many families in a crisis. And, I think making sure that we listen to the leadership and making sure that we try and work together and being in constant communication. I know I want to uplift our leadership for, we've seen this before, unfortunately, the 2011 flood, the 2019 ice storm, the 2020, the 2020 to 2020, pandemic, when the pandemic started. And we've seen this time and time again. And, First Nations need to be better equipped. We keep pushing for it, and Canada needs to come to the table and have a real talk about, emergency management and making sure that First Nations are more equipped to deal with that. We keep pushing for it, and First Nations are doing the best with what they have, and they have very little. They're stretching it far and helping each other. And so I lift the leadership up from right across the country, helping each other, offering support. And, I think there's so many lessons to be learned in this, but at the same time, in the meantime, to make sure that people are getting to safety and making sure that we, what's our next game plan, right? Where that we provide that support to the nations. So thank you.
Thank you for your time today, National Chief.
Yeah, thank you.